The USA has the biggest economy ever. Just last year, it made more money than the whole world did back in 1993, which was 30 years ago. That's seriously huge. The USA's power is so big that it's going to shape how the whole world handles money for a long time, maybe even the next 100 years. But it's going to share its important role with new competitors. When we use purchasing power parity to measure how much money countries really have, China actually ends up having more money than the USA. And there are more countries that are going to challenge the USA's money power. By the year 2050, experts think the USA might be the third or fourth most powerful country when it comes to making money. China and India might become even more powerful, and there's a chance that Indonesia might join in too. However, the United States isn't ready to give up its top spot in the economy. They're doing things like trying to stop China's access to the world's most advanced computer chips in order to do that. But this plan isn't working like they thought. Instead of keeping China in check, the rules from the US are making China think in really smart and creative ways. The Chinese leaders are using an amazing plan to get around these rules and keep their country strong, even when the US is trying to slow them down. Stay tuned today as we will be discussing how the US is using sanctions on China for things related to computer chips and how China is using an incredible strategy against this move. When Joe Biden became the president in 2021, many people thought he would make the US economy better by stopping the trade fight that Donald Trump began with China in 2018. Logically, it kind of makes sense. The US gets a lot of stuff from China. Even though there's talk about not relying on China as much, last year the United States actually got even more things from China, about 6% more. But the US is also kind of falling behind in the chip industry. You would think that the United States has tons of really smart people there, and they welcome people from all around the world. They could actually be the best at making those small computer chips, but in reality, things don't look rosier for their chip-making business. And this challenge might stick around for quite a while. During the next decade, American chip creators are planning to create around 115,000 new jobs by 2030. But the problem is, the US doesn't have enough people who are really good at making chips. And this has already started to affect current semiconductor projects in the USA. However, it was a big deal for the USA when TSMC, which is the biggest chip maker in the world, said they want to make chips in Arizona. This move seemed like a win for US leaders who want to control China's growth, but even this plan is having problems. The Arizona facility is behind schedule, and now they think it won't be ready until 2025. The issue is that they don't have enough skilled workers, and the costs are higher than making chips in Taiwan. The US leaders might not know that making these advanced computer chips is really done best in just a couple of places, mostly Taiwan and Korea. It's not like building a new factory in Arizona and making chips right away. Making the most advanced computer chips in the world is one of the hardest things to do. And the US leaders don't seem to realize that the money they get from selling chips to China is important for American chip companies to keep doing research and development. Just last month, the big bosses of America's three main chip companies, Intel, Nvidia, and Qualcomm, talked with officials under the Biden administration. They talked about what will happen with chip making in America. They told Joe Biden one simple thing. If the US stops them from selling chips to China, it could mess up a big plan of Biden to bring chip making back to the US. Let us explain why. A year and a half ago, Intel said they were building a $20 billion chip place in Ohio. They hope it'll be the biggest chip-making spot in the world. But the head of Intel, Pat Gelsinger, said something that makes you think for a minute. He said China is like 25 to 30% of the people who buy chips. So if they lose some of that, they need fewer factories. This is interesting because Biden put money into making chips in the US. But to do that, US companies need to sell to China, which buys a lot. It looks like the US can't really separate from China without hurting itself. They've worked with China for 50 years, making many things together. But now the US leaders want to stop China from growing, even if it means their own economy gets hurt. But interesting things happen every time when you push China into a corner. They find smart ways to solve problems. Joe Biden thought if China can't get the best chips, its economy would suffer badly. But China didn't get affected at all. They changed their plan and used lots of money to make older legacy chips that are still really useful. These chips do many things, like making your coffee maker work and your phone too. The question is, why would China do this? Well, they're really good at making things while being cost-effective at the same time. Now, the US and Europe are worried that if China makes lots of these chips, they could take over the market and be cheaper than them. This would shift the power directly back into the hands of the Chinese. This could also lead to the market for older chips becoming just like solar energy. In solar cells, China makes up around 90% of the total demand. So if you want to use solar energy, no matter where you are, you have to go through China. And still, if you're not sure how important these older chips are and how much they worry US leaders, let's look at what a real expert is saying. Peter Vennick is the CEO of the company named ASML in the Netherlands. This company makes equipment for chip making, which is very important for the whole process. He says that when you think about things like electric cars, the rollout of the telecommunication infrastructure, and better batteries, those are the areas where older chips are becoming super important, and China is totally leading in those areas. So this shows that the chip battle the United States is having with China isn't really working. And it's kind of like how the US punishments on Russia didn't do what they wanted. Even though Russia got a lot of sanctions for 2 years, now experts say Russia's economy will grow a bit, around 1.5% this year. You might wonder how that's happening. Right now, American companies are giving around $1 billion every year to Russia's nuclear agency to buy uranium. The US didn't fully stop Russia because the US needs uranium for power. Even though you hear about the US being tough on Russia, they still send lots of money to buy uranium. Why? Because about 20% of US homes use uranium for electricity and heat. So, to sum it all up, it seems like the United States and its leaders, including President Biden, are facing some challenges in their efforts to slow down China's economic growth. The US wanted to control China by stopping them from getting advanced computer chips, but that plan is backfiring. On the other hand, China is becoming more creative and finding new ways to grow despite the restrictions. Even the US attempt to make chips at home is facing problems. And China is smartly stepping into the spotlight by focusing on making valuable older legacy chips and dominating that market. So this situation is a clear reminder that the US needs China more than it might have thought. That's it for today. And now we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Do subscribe to the channel if you like our content. We will catch you in the next one.